Right, okay, so I'm going to look at today, I'm going to look at a classic air rifle, iconic air rifle actually. Now I know that term's bandied about a bit, but there are certain air rifles that have been iconic over the years, um, and this is certainly one of them. Now I'm a teenager of the 80s, and I consider that the golden age, if you like, of the Spring air rifle, before PCPs came on the scene, and it was when sort of Spring air rifles reached their peak really, and it's where most of the iconic air rifles came from. So there was a few rifles that I think you could say are iconic. So you've got the Air Sporter, obviously, and its great rival, the Webley Mark III. Both of those iconic rifles. And I know the Air Sporter went on and on and on through the S and all sorts of different versions. I've reviewed two on this channel, a Mark 1 and the carbine version that came much later. So there's the Air Sporter, the Mark III, and then the two biggies really. Throughout the 80s and 90s, these were the two rifles that had people arguing about which was the best. And they were obviously the Feinwerkbau HW35 Export, which is an icon. Brilliant rifle. I had one for my Christmas present when I was young. Bought from Optima Leisure, who you may remember, a company called Optima Leisure used to advertise in Airgun World all the time. More famous as well for selling their Moonlighter and Super Moonlighter scopes, which really were the first widely available big objective lens scopes. One was a 45 and one was a 50, which at the time was like, whoa, unbelievable, because most scopes maxed out at 40. If you had a 40 on, you were proper going for it. Most were still sort of 20, 30, and that was about it. So them scopes were real crown seekers, and they sold. I bought my I was bought my 35 Export by my parents for my Christmas present when I was about 16, I think. What a rifle! Absolutely gorgeous, a proper beast. It was 177. It was heavy, weighed about 8.5 pounds. Heavy, really long, big rifle, but lovely. What a trigger, fantastic. A record trigger, superb. And a beautiful thing to look at. But back then, advertising wasn't quite so stringently regulated as it was now. So despite being described as the most powerful air rifle you can buy, mine actually generated about 10.5 foot-pounds, which was still plenty. Don't get me wrong, it was plenty powerful enough. But then my dad went out and bought a Feinwerkbau Sport, and he bought a 127 22 caliber Feinwerkbau Sport, and I've got to say that out the box that rifle was just a shade below the 12 foot-pound legal limit. It was a lot lighter, probably a pound lighter, and it was those two rifles that always sort of fought it out, which was better, the E35V or the Feinwerkbau Sport. The Sport was lighter, much more powerful straight out the box, and had a fairly good trigger. It had tons of spring preload on it though, so it was quite a lively rifle to shoot, whereas the 35 Export was a bit more dead in the hand because of the weight, and also because it didn't have as much spring preload in the rifle. So the Feinwerk was easy to work on yourself as well, because if you had a Feinwerkbau Sport, because of the amount of spring preload, you needed a sash cramp. But there was always that argument between the two. And I must admit, for field work, I actually preferred my dad's Feinwerkbau. So recently, one came up, and I just couldn't help myself. So I had to buy it. Feinwerkbau Sport 127 22 caliber. Now, anyone that knows anything about these things will be looking at this immediately and spot that this is no normal Feinwerkbau Sport. This is actually a Feinwerkbau Sport that was tuned and customised by a chap called Rod Langton, or Leighton I think his name was. Used to be a writer for Urban World back in the 80s, and ended up specialising in tuning and altering the Feinwerkbau Sport and the HW80. Now what he did, he had two versions of these customised rifles, he called them. One was a target version and one was the field version. And what he did, this is the field version, what he did basically was, both on the HW80 and the Feinwerkbau Sport, because they were very, very similar rifles. So he slimmed down the front of the stock. So on the HW80 and the original Feinwerkbau Sport, this stock here was quite chunky. It came down a bit lower than this did, and it was a bit wider and more boxy at the front here. So he streamlined it in so it flowed in with the cocking lever more and made for a smaller and more comfortable grip on the front for hunting. And he did exactly the same thing with his field HW80 conversion. The other thing he did is he cut down the barrels slightly. So he took an inch or so off the barrels to make them into a carbine. And on the end originally of both the HW80 and the Feinwerkbaus that he did, there would have been something called a Galway silencer. Now Galway were really one of the first companies to start making air rifle silencers on a commercial basis, and they had a little slip-on bit and then the silencer screwed on. And if you look at the end of the barrel here underneath, you will see that it's still got the little mark where the grub screw would have sat in. So it's like a little indent in the barrel there where the grub screw for the moderator would have sat in. Now the moderator's long gone on this gun, but that's neither here nor there really. So the other thing he did, obviously, because it had a truncated barrel that was designed to have a moderator on it, these came with no open sights on the Rod Langton specials, and they were tuned. And even now, you know, I mean, talking 1983-ish, probably, something like that. Even now, despite this gun having had several spring changes, you can tell the internals have been polished and smoothed well. This is a very, very smooth shooting air rifle. Really is. He did a great job. So let's have a look at the Feinwerkbau Sport then. So like I say, these came out, Feinwerkbau's only sporting air rifle at the time. They were more famous for their target rifles and target pistols, and they came out with this little beauty to try and take some of the market that the Virat was taking. So standard spring action break barrel air rifle, ball bearing D10 on it, standard dovetails, but this one had these little grooves for a recoil arrestor, which at the time was quite cutting edge. Automatic safety catch, but unlike the Virat one was a little pin, this had a little tab that came out the back when you cocked the rifle, and then you just pushed it in with your thumb, like so, to take the shot. The very early versions had a plastic trigger, and then they converted to a metal trigger. Nice beach stock. These didn't come with a walnut stock. You always had a beach stock. Hand cut checkering on the pistol grip, and a little bit of a palm swell on the pistol grip as well. It would have had a black pistol grip cap with a white line spacer, but this has been replaced at some time or other with a brass one. Recoil pad with a white line spacer, and a little bit of a raised cheek piece on the side as well. Fitted as per from the factory with sling swivels, and as a better design for than perhaps a lot of air rifles at the time, which had a band around the barrel. These had the front sling swivel was fitted to the breech, very near to the axis pin, so it was a lot stronger, put less strain on the barrel, and all in all a neater option really. Down the back end, standard, screwed into the stock. Rubber recoil pad with a white line spacer on them. And like I say, lots of spring preload on these rifles as opposed to the Weihrauch and many others at the time. It had a fairly narrow cylinder and also had a synthetic piston head and a neoprene ring on the piston. Unlike the Weihrauchs, the early Weihrauchs, well, right up to fairly recent times, Weihrauchs had the leather washer. So these were also slightly more consistent straight out of the box. So they were more powerful out of the box and slightly more consistent out of the box. And therefore really didn't respond to tuning quite as well as the Weihrauch did. The 35 exports, as everyone knows, the Vixen, was heavily tuned and a spectacularly lovely rifle that won a lot of the early field target shooting competitions, and this was probably its main rival. The advantage with this was that the basic rifle was very, very capable. The consistency was good. As you would expect from a Feinwerkbau, the accuracy was very good. The barrels were really good. As I say, that synthetic head and the neoprene ring gave very good consistency, and the trigger, whilst not as good as the Weihrauchs, was way ahead of the vast majority of the competition. Way ahead. Much better than anything fitted to a contemporary British air rifle. So this one is fitted with a Simmons scope, and I just couldn't help myself. I saw it, someone I know was selling it, and I just couldn't help myself. I thought, just brought back memories of going shooting with my old man when he owned one of these, and we were always arguing about who had the best air rifle, whether the 35 Export was better than his Feinwerkbau. And he'd also whinge at me like mad because I used to take his Feinwerkbau out all the time, especially lamping, because it was a much easier rifle to carry and trudge around the fields at night. Me and my mate used to take it in turns. This is back in the day when you needed a lead acid motorbike battery with a converted motorbike lamp to use as a lamp, and we'd take it in turns. One of us would lamp, one would shoot, and then we'd swap it round. So it brought, I just couldn't help myself. I had to buy it because it just brought back memories. So I'm going to keep this for a little while and have a little play with it. But what a fantastic gun, a proper icon. These things are proper icons, and that, considering how many were sold, you don't really see that many around these days. You'd think you'd see a lot more of them, but you don't for some strange reason. I don't know why, because they're extremely well engineered. So, you know, you would expect to see more. The quality of them is really good. The breech is very tight. The tolerances on them were good. You know, Feinwerkbau were a really top-notch maker, and this rifle was definitely one of the better made air rifles of the period. So you'd expect to see more, but you don't for some reason. Whether it's because people that have got them are reluctant to sell them, I don't know. But you don't see that many for sale. But a fantastic rifle, and like I say, this one, a bit of scarcity. I've seen a HW80 that from Rod Lang's tuning or customization shop, and it's almost identical to this, to be honest. Short barrel, slim four-stop, tuned up, and again it was fitted with the Galway silencer. Again, that HW80 also had the silencer missing. But yeah, great guns, and this one's not in bad condition. The internals of it are better than the externals, to be honest, because the chap that owned it is a gunsmith. So he's really looked after the internals, new seals, new springs, proper lubrication. It's been properly cared for internally. There are a few little marks on the metalwork on the outside, and the stock is, well, it's no bad damage to it, to be honest with you. It's just got a few little dinks here and there, but there again, it is a rifle that's coming from about 1983, so it's seen a bit of use, this thing. But yeah, I'm its second owner. and made up with it. A proper icon. What a great little rifle. Really, really nice. Thanks for watching.